what we're going to do is I'm going to do a little prayer of gratitude, and then we'll go over a review of what is energy healing. In a nutshell, what is energy healing? And then we'll go into tonight's topic, which is how divinity shines through us. Oh, thank you. So good to see everybody. All right. Thank you to the source of creation for being everything. This live webinar, all of us. Thank you for being our ancestors and their role in the presence of our physical forms. Thank you to the eternal tradition of wisdom for being the bridge between infinite being, unbounded, unmanifest, quality-less source of creation, and the entire relative manifest level of creation. And thank you to everyone, to all of us, for blessing our session tonight with the ability to work concisely and efficiently. We want to bring out the most important pieces of information and the most valuable. We want to engage together in the most valuable healing processes that will maximally support everyone in the highest and best possible way. We want to really, through that experience of energy healing, we want to deeply understand the nature of energy healing so that everybody who's here, everybody who's watching tonight in lifetime, and everybody who may watch sometime in the future has the opportunity to expand and grow in their own ability to do energy work. So thanks for being with me. All right. So in a nutshell, what is energy healing? Energy healing is the ability, it is the technology of using consciousness to affect evolutionary transformation for the body, for all areas of life that need support. So sometimes not just the body needs healing, sometimes relationships or finances or spiritual development or any area of interest has the potential to benefit from energy healing. When we're working with the field of consciousness, it's like an infinite ocean. So what I'm providing for you are a couple of things. I'm providing a roadmap, so we have an understanding of how to navigate the ocean of consciousness effectively and get right into, ideally, the core or the seed of a concern and address that seed of the concern in the most efficient possible manner. Who addresses the seed of the concern? Infinite being addresses the seed of the concern. The other thing that I provide is the voice of that happening. So I'm using several tools, which I've outlined in the past that I use for these events. I use inference. I use my own intuitive abilities. I use refined perception and consciousness. Consciousness, there's a certain element of stepping out of the way and just letting being dictate, letting the source of creation be the guide. There's a saying from the Vedas, Brahman is the charioteer. You let Brahman drive the chariot, and we're just kind of riding along going, oh, there's a tree. Oh, look, a birdie, a stream. So that's my job, is to describe, and the value of that for everyone who understands the nature of creating order out of chaos. I'm using speech to do that. I'm describing that which is at a very abstract level of creation, and that description of what's going on at an abstract level of creation supports the ability for all of us to kind of make the bridge between what we're experiencing on the level of our own consciousness, our own perception, with what's going on at that very fine level. So I do my best to describe. And as you all know, those of you who've been with me for a while, as you all know, sometimes we go into unknown territory, and Dorothy's just recalling it as it comes. So that's always fun when that happens. So, okay. So tonight's topic is how divinity shines through us. And my intention in this webinar is that I see one of the great goals of energy healing ultimately is not just to become well and to overcome illnesses, but to use the energy healing technologies to support everyone's ability to rise to a higher level of their own potential. And when I would describe like what is the highest level of potential, that would be complete and total integration between infinite unbounded being and the material level of creation, the physical material manifest level of self. So there are no breaks, that it's just a smooth continuum. So that's my idea behind tonight's webinar, is how that, and I use the word divinity for that, but we know there are lots of words for that, right? How that unbounded quality-less source of everything that is, actually the mechanics of how that integrates into the relative level of expression. And my thought was that it would be very nice to do some healings on that account, to do some energy healing work. Hey, hellos to everyone coming in from California there. Yeah, to do some energy healing work to support that process for everyone. Like, how can we use energy healing to make that process work more efficiently or more profoundly or more completely? So that was my idea. All right. As you know, in the weeks preceding the webinar, the live webinar, I always get a lot of downloads and information, and new information comes and so forth. So it's my joy and pleasure to share that with everyone. Tonight, when I was sitting deep in my own inner silence, one of the things I noticed that seemed to be surfacing was a desire or an intention to go into the most fundamental, the deepest, if we want to say it, I would like to say this delicately, but like kind of like the deepest, darkest, the most, the biggest blocks, the biggest blockages that stand between ourselves and our ability to realize our full potential. And I've been looking at those really, really deep blocks over the last few weeks. And as you know, in the previous webinar, we were looking at karma and kind of, we were dissecting or analyzing how karmic blocks reside at the causal level of the physiology and what the landscape of those karmic blocks are. And we looked at some energy healing to get in and dissolve those karmic blocks. But this time around, what I realized, because, you know, this is an extension, of course, of our previous work, is that there are not only pain bodies that kind of stop us from getting in and looking at the deeper imbalances, but an extension of the pain bodies is that they create blockages of awareness. And so I was really questioning deeply this principle that almost everyone seems to have some blind spots. You know, it's hard to look at those things that are the most uncomfortable. And we have the blessings today, right now, of today being the first day of Navaratri. Happy Navaratri, everyone. And that means that the energy of the day is overseen by that aspect of the mother of creation. You could say that aspect of divinity that is responsible for qualities like setting healthy boundaries and fiercely addressing the most difficult or challenging situations. I think that's maybe why that thought came up earlier, because we have some support today to actually do that, to actually go into those really deep areas and look at them with resources required to open up the blind spots. We bring our awareness. And this is one of the fundamental principles of energy healing, is we're using awareness or attention as the tool. So the deepest challenges are the ones which we carry through the entire lifetime. I'm sure some people have heard of some of the research that's been done on, for instance, kittens. And they put some of the kittens in a world with only vertical things, and some of the kittens in the world with only horizontal things. And then when the kittens get to be big cats, they bring them out into the real world that's got both horizontal things and vertical things. And what they find is the kitty cats who grew up in the world with only horizontal things will accidentally bump into table legs because they're not wired. Their brains aren't wired to see the table legs because they didn't grow up in that situation. They didn't grow up in that space. So the deepest challenges are the ones which we have held our whole lives. And I offer this to our beautiful healing collective because those are the ones that keep us functioning as small structures in creation. The premise or the principle of realizing our divinity is one of expanding consciousness to the universal or cosmic level. And what stops us is the fact that our lifespans are just a blip in the story of the whole universe. And the lifespan of the physiology. And the physiology is our ground or anchor to experiencing our reality. So I was in a conversation with a Jyotishi this week, and we were going back and forth about the yugas. And he was saying, well, there's some holy people who say that we're in Sat Yuga now. And then there are others that say we're in Kali Yuga now. And what yuga are we really in? And I emailed back and I said, it's like, we're just like gnats, like a gnat. It lives 2 days, like maybe in the springtime. So the gnat thinks, oh, well, it's just springtime all the time. The whole universe is just springtime. Because the gnat's lifetime is just so small, right? So we're kind of like, he and I are discussing back and forth, like what yuga are we in? And the thing is, we're looking at it from the perspective of our individuality, which only gives us a tiny slice of the yugas. And the gift of that conversation was the perspective of how little we actually are. He sent me a joke from a friend. He said, yeah, it's like you're a mosquito and you get enlightened and you go, oh, this is what being enlightened is. And then all of a sudden you get smashed on a car window. So oh, no. I know, sorry. It's not that funny. But anyway, the principle is, how do we make the leap? And that's the question that I'm asking. And I bring this to you, I bring this to our healing collective, because as a collective, we have this big vision that's bigger than Dorothy's individual vision, and it's bigger than any one of our individual visions. We come together as a collective, and we can all benefit from the collective vision. Just checking into our collective to... I'm taking a little read on what I call the astral level of our energy healing collective, and everyone's heard of the web of life, right? So that's the level where the consciousness appears as threads of creation. It's a collective level of self. And at that level, just seeing how all the threads are tied together and how our ability to coordinate our perception, both gross and subtle perception, is working right now. And so from the finest level of the physiologies, all of our physiologies, the quality of integration is starting. Another thing that I see happening is it appears as if our live webinar has collective, and everybody, even those of you who watch this webinar later, are able to participate. Everybody in the webinar is able to participate within the context of a kind of safe space. We need a safe space where we can share our perceptions, where we can share our understanding of what's happening. So everyone has the freedom and the flexibility to add whatever they wish or feel is appropriate to the safe space of the webinar. And nobody is required. And everybody's perspective is honored. So that's safe space. And what I'm seeing is the safe space itself takes on a shape at the causal level of our physiologies. And the shape is not a static shape. It is an organic, moving shape, just like the surface of Jupiter. You got to imagine all that stuff moving back there. And that it continues to morph and evolve based on everyone's contribution in each moment. And it's interesting because at the causal level of creation, time and space are not experienced the way they are in our dense physical bodies. So at the causal level of our healing collective, that safe space is responding not just to everyone who's watching live right now, but also everybody who will watch this video in the future. So it's morphing and evolving in a, we could say, kind of a multidimensional manner. And that allows the safe space to function like a life force, essentially. It's like our collective creating the condition by which an aspect of consciousness, of the ocean of consciousness, can sort of spring to life, but it resides at a very, very fine level. So that's an aspect of consciousness without a physical material body, but it has its own autonomy, you could say, its own consciousness. And I'm asking that safe space, we'll just call it safe space, but it's like a life form, essentially, we could say, because everything is life. Establishing the connection to the source of creation and to absolute truth and to Dharma. So the safe space is receiving a Dharma matrix. That's beautiful. So, and these forms, it's not that like the safe space is born only now and exists only now as part of our healing collective. All the forms of creation are eternal. And so it always has been and it always will be. But at this time, we have a relationship with our own, with the manifestation of our own collective. And the Dharma matrix present there. As if it's Sat Yuga. So all the four pillars of Dharma are present and stable and integrated and blessing everyone. So whatever piece of information we put in the safe space then is reflected back to each one of us as an expression of Dharma and as an expression of our own Dharma, because whatever, it's like a mirror, right? What you give in, it reflects back at you, but it comes back with this aspect of upholding and promoting everyone's highest evolution. Beautiful. So we can experiment for a minute. and see what happens. We put our perception of, and at this time, this webinar is about manifesting our full potential, essentially, as an expression of divine being. So everyone's perception of what that means. What does that mean? That I am like a manifestation of divine being. So that the divinity, that divine source of creation, gets a chance to understand itself through the eyes of Dharma and through the collective effect of our webinar consciousness. So I'm just feeling that, just letting it happen. That's what it wanted to do. So lots of things are happening. One of the first things that's happening is the safe space is getting safer, which is good. Forgiveness. Forgiveness is flowing, and the other thing that I see happening is that every single particle of perception and experience and understanding that's sort of offered in to the source of creation through this expression that I call the safe space. Every particle is completed. The connection between our safe space and our healing collective and the source of creation is so well integrated. And putting the Dharma matrix in there, it makes it really stable and strong. Dharma sustains, right? So it's able to sustain. All the qualities, all the features required for sustaining are present. And so everything we put into this collective expression and experience of creating ourselves as perfect expressions of divinity, it reflects back completed. Completed. The experience of completion is itself, it has like a spectrum of expression, right? So what we have at the surface of creation are lots of opposites. And in every node of the web of life, there are opposites, like complementary pairs that are kind of working together to sort of churn out the manifest level of creation. And so completion involves the marriage of complementary pairs in such a way that their interaction gives expression to the highest possible form that it can give, the highest possible form. I know that sounds really abstract, but what I'm seeing in our group is that the concept of completion as a marriage of complementary opposites and giving rise to the highest possible form is communicating to our physiologies at a very small dimension. So I'm seeing it, first I was seeing it going into the cells, but then I was seeing it going into subcellular structures, molecular structures, atomic structures, subatomic structures, subatomic structures, deep in. That principle. For the body physically, that means the coordination of the complementary pair of opposites that we would think of as male and female. Because that's how our body is formed, right? Human bodies are formed by the complement of male and female energies coming together. And then that gives rise to the physical form. So it's like a useful tool because our universe is full of complementary pairs of opposites, right? And each complementary pair is ideal for forming I would say ideal for giving rise to different types of forms, right? Day and night, and the seasons, and or winter and summer, or the colors, the complementary pairs of colors, and so forth. The elements that make up the physiology, the 5 elements, essentially evolve from complementary pairs. And what I'm seeing is that in that point in everyone's physiology, where the coming together of the male and female energies, that there are, for almost everyone, this is also the source of some of the very deepest and oldest, if we want to use the word, imbalances. That in other words, there's the stress, it tends to go and sit in these spots where this energy comes together, because it's so potent and it's so vital for our reality that it tends to go under the radar. It's so deep that we don't even notice it or think about it a lot of the time. And of course, everyone contains both, all of us have, aspects of male and female. Everyone has that, of course, especially at the DNA level, because we have DNA from father's line and mother's line. We have both. I'm noticing, as I'm looking into that, looking at the molecular levels of the physiology. And of course, this means work in the ancestral archives, and it also means healing support for the DNA. That I'm feeling very much a soft flow of wisdom coming in, like blooming out of our healing collective as an expression or form of that aspect of the Mother of Creation that's lively today, the Durga aspect of Mother of Creation. The Durga aspect of the Mother of Creation is embodied in the hip, pelvis, intestines, belly area of the body. So that's the area that is on the receiving end of the healing. And that is also, as we've looked in previous webinars, the area of the being where we receive cosmic information. Like most of the information about the universe is coming in to the belly area. The energy moves up the spine. For new people, the energy moves up the spine. It comes in first into the lower portion of the body, and as it moves up through the different chakras, it refines and it gets narrowed down, and we finally get information up in the head area, where we're looking at these small spectrums of the electromagnetic field. But in the belly area, where you have trillions of gut bacteria, vast amounts of information are processed. So because the ability for us to step outside of our small individuality and become more perfect instruments of expression of divinity requires expanding the capacity to absorb and comprehend reality. So one of the things I'm seeing in the gut is the way the Agnis interface with the elements. And this is vital for an upgrade to the senses of perception. Because the senses of perception, in order for our senses of perception to expand past the narrow range that we're used to experiencing, and yet still with the stability to maintain our ability to function in the world, right? You don't want to be so busy looking at angels that you have a car accident or something like that. So We want to be able to expand the capacity of the senses of perception while maintaining even greater sensitivity and awareness to this field of creation. Because it's my perception anyway, that the higher goal of embodying divinity includes the physical form and all this material level of creation, because there's nothing that isn't divinity. It's just that somehow there's been a breach, there's been a blockage, something is in there. And I think it's, for a lot of people, if we want to go in, we want to go into the deepest seed core of whatever's stopping the divine from just absolutely bursting out of every single cell, through every cell of the body simultaneously. So there. I'm seeing in the core of the body, in the cord of light, between the heart and the gut area, the pelvic floor. So like between the first chakra and the fourth chakra, in that area. So deep down in that area, balancing of the agnis of the body to promote a more refined, or I would say also for many people more complete, orderly absorption of nutrients from the food, which are directly associated with the needs of the senses with regards to the 5 elements. Because the different elements, they go to the different senses. There are something called Buddhagnis, I believe. There are 5 of them in the liver that sort and categorize the nutrient-rich blood that comes into the liver, into the 5 elements. And so there's an agni for each of the 5 elements. And then those elements, the earth element goes to the sense of smell, and the water element goes to the sense of taste, and so forth. Fire to the eyes, and air to the skin, and space to the hearing. So I'm seeing this whole system in everybody's bodies. At a fine level of creation, Agni is about the manifestation of energy, essentially. It's a transformative energy in the body. And it's directly, the strength and balance and wellness of the Agnis is directly related to how balanced the physiology is, and how much energy we have, and how much intelligence, and how well we sleep, and all those details, So what we're doing is we're setting a foundation for everyone's physiology to function more the way we functioned when we were little people and we didn't have a lot of stress in our bodies. When people are little, you know how babies sleep? They sleep so good. So this balancing of the Agnis, and I did some research into this over these last few weeks, these different Agnis and so forth. It was interesting because another discussion came up with a brilliant woman about soma. And the discussion that came up was like, well, where exactly is soma formed in the body? And, you know, we have various authorities who have their opinion about that, of course. But what it comes down to in the end, at least for me, is I need to understand it directly. I appreciate the authorities. God bless all the authorities. God bless the Vedas, and God bless the gurus, and God bless everyone. But if there's a discrepancy, it means there's a potential for deeper understanding. And so in order to understand soma, I just put up a video about soma a couple weeks ago, right? It was necessary to go in and look at the Agnis, because at least one authority says that soma is the byproduct of digestion when the individual is experiencing higher states of consciousness. So what's the difference between a physiology? What precisely, like what is that neurochemical? What's the microbiome doing differently for a person who's in high states of consciousness, presumably a better expression of divinity, right? Versus someone who's not in a higher state of consciousness, who's not producing soma. We need to understand this mechanic, because by understanding, then we can organize our awareness to go in and approach those aspects of our own physiologies that allow these physiologies to become soma production machines. And I didn't get all the answers, by the way, over the last 2 weeks, but my joy of being with you is that when we're together as a collective, we're able to fathom those levels in a much deeper, in a more profound way, and bring out the truth from the truth is good for everyone, not just for one person. So when I look into it really, really deeply, one of the first things I see is how everything in the relative material level of creation is electromagnetic field. Basically, it's all electromagnetic. All the material stuff. It's energy. It's energy. And if we go deeper, getting into the field of consciousness and just the field of pure consciousness alone, and just looking at how the combination of impulses of being as it folds in on its own nature gives rise to the manifest level of creation, and how the collapse of wholeness, of fullness to fullness of emptiness, and fullness of emptiness, the infinite silence, collapses to infinite dynamism, the infinite dynamism to infinite silence, creates a friction. So that's another pair of opposites, and that's a more fundamental pair of opposites, thank you everybody, than the male-female pair of opposites. Okay, so what that means is we're looking not so much at the manifestation of our physical bodies, but we're going deeper, and we're looking at the manifestation of everything. Oh, that's good. And how can that Agni sits right in that relationship between silence and dynamism folding into each other. My question to being is, how do we balance this Agni in our physiologies so that our physiologies function within the electromagnetic spectrum in such a way as to promote invincibility? You have to understand, this has been a question that's come up. Fairfield is receiving its smart meters, even now, even today. Fairfield's, Iowa is receiving its smart meters, and I just found out today that Korea, and of course I'm behind on the news, but that Korea will be receiving 5G this summer, the whole country. So for those who are electromagnetically sensitive, that's not good news. And how do we create invincibility in our physiologies that produce electromagnetism, the pumping of the heart, the movement of the nervous system? We produce electromagnetic energy. They call bioelectric energy, right? That radiates from the physiologies. How do we work with this energy in such a way as to promote the ability to function within absolutely any type of magnetic field and successfully come out stronger and more invincible and healthier? It's all just, if we have to go down to that level that's deeper than the electromagnetic. We have to go down to that consciousness level. And what we're doing is I'm looking at that Agni, that first flow of Agni. So Agni is a spectrum, right? It resides as an aspect of consciousness folding in on its own nature, but it also exists as the fire of metabolism in the body at the more dense end of its expression. So we've got a range. So we need to figure out where the imbalance crops into this expression of Agni in the physiology. And as I'm looking out into our group, I'm seeing with everybody it's a slightly different spot. Some people's Agni is balanced up to like the astral level or the emotional level or the mental level. And then other people, the Agni's balanced down at the causal level, but when it gets to the emotional level, is not so balanced. So we've all got different levels of balance of Agni within the spectrum of our physiologies. And I'm asking being, what do we need to do with regards to energy healing? Like, where do we need to focus our collective attention for everyone and everyone on Earth, and not just us, but our microbiome and all the plants and animals? Because, you know, we've got about a year and 5G is going to be everywhere. So how do we organize ourselves? And how do we organize the Agni and the physiology to be so balanced, to be such a perfect expression of divinity itself, that our physiologies, not just our physiologies, but all the living beings' physiologies, are able to maintain and function in the optimal manner, in spite of any sort of changes that come down the line in our electromagnetic environment? That's the question. I'm just asking being, because I don't know the answer. But it's my privilege and joy to ask in your presence and to find out the answer. So as I drop the question into the field of my own inner silence, our source, everyone's source, and seeing that spectrum of how the Agni becomes out of balance at different points along the spectrum, depending on the individuals. And one of the things I'm seeing is that the spectrum in more complex organisms like humans and larger animals is wider, and the spectrum is smaller in smaller beings like bacteria and our microbiome and plankton, you know, all the different smaller. So what is the answer that's coming back is that it's more important for us right now, because we've got different types of spectrums going on, for our healing collective to focus in on those simpler forms first, and particularly because they are fundamental to all the more complex forms. Right? The life of our microbiome is fundamental to the life of our bodies, and the plankton are fundamental to the entire food chain in the oceans and so forth. So if we go in at the smaller spectrum, it also is easier for us as humans right now, where we are with our own energy healing capabilities, to look at that spectrum first. So I'm saying, okay, so we go and we look at the smaller spectrum. And we're looking at Agni in its most primordial, like fundamental form. And in its fundamental form, it is the light at the beginning of the creative process. It's the light at the beginning of the manifestation process. So at that level, we can enjoy it as in terms of its energy frequency. And its energy frequency at that level is like that vision of all possibilities, a kind of enthusiastic investment in the manifestation of reality. I think that's a good word to describe it, the enthusiastic investment in the manifestation of reality. So it's like enthusiasm and impetus and intention. Is intention in there? Even intention is present in those very fine, the smaller, the microorganisms of our world. So what's happening is, in our healing collective, I'm experiencing in everyone's heart chakra, there's a kind of an expansion of a sweet, supportive, loving, almost nurturing expression of self, which is flowing from our beautiful, big healing collective out to the world's microorganisms. And I'm also seeing behind that flow, and that flow, of course, is manifested in our bodies at kind of the causal level of creation, but behind it, there's also an energy that's for us as humans, more or less produced more at the solar plexus area. And that's a kind of like a gumption that's behind that flow. And the gumption is very, very similar or in nature to the quality of Agni in its primordial form, which is that investment in the exuberant investment in the manifestation, right? So it's like that. It's that type of energy. It's basically an Agni energy that's being produced by our physiologies in the solar plexus, and it's coming up and it's forming together with this sincere desire to produce an effect that's going to bless the microorganisms of our world. And of course, what that does for our physiologies is it brings the energy signature of Agni that's sitting in that warm belt area around the middle of the body where most of the digestion takes place anyway, right? Liver, stomach, spleen, pancreas, etc., gallbladder. And it brings it in alignment with the original energy signature of what is Agni, which is this pure, extremely, extremely pure impulse of enthusiastic application of consciousness to the manifesting process. And I'm seeing the hearts continuing to expand. And it feels like there's, as the hearts expand, and it has this sort of like energy flow behind it, the expansion of sweetness and support for the microorganisms of our world. Again, it's a little bit like the work that we did at the beginning of our session, where we were putting our attention into our safe space. And what that does is it causes a reflective effect. So we're producing collectively, and there are hundreds of people on this live webinar. So even right now in real time, not to mention the thousands that will view it later. So this expansion of pure intention, expression of divine intention for the support of the microbiome of our world, we can call it that, is producing a wave in return from the microorganisms of our world back into our the safe space of our healing collective. And it's very interesting what's coming back. What's being returned is on a very subtle level. Of course, they don't speak English, but as it returns, it seems to be not affecting our physical bodies so much, but affecting the body elemental. That's what I'm seeing. It's affecting the body elemental. I don't think I've talked a lot about the body elemental in these live webinars, but it was definitely one of the points that was up for consideration over the last 3 weeks. So I think I might have done a video about it. Anyway, the body elemental is the culmination of all the healing energies in the body when the baby is in the uterus, right? And the placenta is in there. The placenta is like the body of the body elemental. And its job is to support the growth of the physiology in a healthy manner. So mother isn't thinking about growing, oh, look, the taste buds are forming. No, she's just thinking she's tired and she'd like to get the weight off her feet, and could someone bring her some ice cream? So the devas, the intelligences that build the body, stay in the body, and there are many, many of them. And then the overarching intelligence beyond that is the body elemental. And the body elemental has a cord of light, just like we have a cord of, our physical bodies have this cord of light energy that runs through it. So the body elemental does too. And the cord of light for the body elemental is like a shaft of light around our body. The body elemental is a much larger form of intelligence, of consciousness. It's definitely a divine expression of our consciousness. But that shaft of light in which our bodies reside acts like a resonating space for all the light medicines and all the energies that we produce to promote healing for the physiology. So as our hearts are having this lovely expansion, this beautiful intention to promote a healing for the microbiome of the earth, that and the Agni in its original pure form is stabilizing in the solar plexus area of the body. This energy is resonating within the shaft or within the space of the body elemental around our bodies. So what that's doing is the microbiome of our earth is essentially offering all of us directly a healing for our own body elementals. And that's huge, because the body elemental is that energetic structure responsible for our health and well-being. So to upgrade the body elemental means to upgrade the very most fundamental level of our own body's intelligence for healing itself. And that's the gift that's coming back from the microbiome. And to that, I bow deeply to all the microbial forms on earth for offering such a precious gift to all of us and allowing us to participate in their process of being the ground, laying the groundwork for life all over the whole earth, everywhere on earth. And so what's happening as the gratitude starts to filter into this exchange, now we've got a two-way street, guys. We've got an exchange going on between our own selves as humans and the microbial intelligence of Earth. When the gratitude goes into the mix, what that's doing is it's supporting an upgrade for the microbiome in the body. I mean, of course, they were part of the original healing, but we have a very unique and precious relationship with our own body's microbiome that's at a much deeper level of intimacy than our relationship with, say, some microbes that are like at the bottom of the ocean, at the bottom of the Pacific Ocean somewhere or something like that. So this, there's an integration. What I'm seeing is an integration is taking place right now between the microbial intelligence within the human body and the microbial intelligence within the larger collective of the earth. And that includes the microbial intelligence within the bodies of many living things, within the bodies of living things and not in the bodies of living things. So we have, it's interesting, it's like our own microbiome becomes a bit of a liaison between us and all the microbial intelligence on Mother Earth. Oh, it's so interesting. So keeping close tabs on our own microbiome is then an essential component to supporting this work, which is at the foundation of building a stronger, basically a stronger physiology for every living thing on Earth. A more resilient, both stronger and more resilient physiology for every living thing on Earth. And I'm seeing that original intention and that flow of the heart is falling back into the field of absolute silence. And I feel like everything that we've done in this healing so far is just being absorbed into the field, into the ocean of the Mother of Creation, into the ocean of absolute divine being. And as this work that we've done is kind of offered into that field of absolute being, it's creating incredible sweetness, incredible deep, deep, deep comfort, deep comfort. And that's what we are receiving back. That's what's activating at the causal level of our physiologies. If we think about the, you know, the navigational pathway from our individual human form all the way to the field of absolute being, that finest relative level of the physiology is the causal level. And at that level, this incredible sweetness is present. It's resonating or reverberating. And again, within the space that we would call our bodies, our body elemental. So upgrade for us, upgrade for the body elemental, upgrade for all the cords of light that are running through and through the physiology. I'm seeing this now expanding from the causal level of the body out into all the astral level of ourself and the web of life. Nice. Okay, so this is what's happening. So now these physiologies are acting like conduits. They're acting like instruments of the divine that are able to resonate or reflect this incredible sweetness that came to us, offered from the source of creation to the whole field of life. It's just spreading out. It's just spreading out, spreading and spreading. Spreading not just Earth, but it's spreading past Earth, past our atmosphere and past our solar system. And it's able to spread out into the larger expression of the field of life in creation. I think we talked in previous, when we have Jupiter here, we talked in previous webinars about how biological information is actually transferred through our galaxy by comets, because there are certain types of bacteria that can live in outer space for eons, and they get dispersed when the comet comes in and whips around the sun like that. It's got its tail, it's dispersing all this amazing DNA information. Good, beautiful stuff. All right. That feels like a nice spot to take a little break and look at some questions. Some wonderful questions came in. We just have 15 minutes left. So if anybody else has questions, you're welcome to send them in on the question and answer box on the bottom of your screen, and I will deal with those anonymously, of course. So brilliant question came in from a man who's been participating in live webinars since the very first webinars I ever had. That was a long time ago now already, at least 5 years. So he said he loves the healings that he experiences and the things that we learn about during the webinars. And he actually wrote that more eloquently than I said it. But in the recent webinars, I've spoken of archives in the causal realm, of templates and blueprints, and of structures. Could I please explain, how do the causal realm's templates and blueprints differ? And there are actually 3 questions, but I'll just take them one at a time. So the first one, and they're very logically laid out here. Thank you for the great question. So how do the causal realm's templates and blueprints differ? All right. The templates are simpler. They're closer. Okay, so at the causal level, we're not constrained by space-time. So consciousness is free to flow through the entire story and history of the universe. And the templates reside at a very early point in the manifestation of the creation. The templates are like, they a little bit remind me of babies in a way that if you line up 12 babies when they're first born, most babies are about 20 inches long, approximately, give or take a little bit. And, you know, they tend to range in weight just a little bit, somewhere between, if they're a preemie, maybe they come out at 2 or 3 pounds. And if they're really big, maybe they come out at 12 or 15 or something. But that's not a very huge range, right? But when you follow babies, say you take 12 babies and you line them up, and the range of difference is small, kind of like the range of the balance of Agni in the microbial structures of our world was smaller than it is in the larger forms. And obviously we need to go tomorrow and look at that and do some more healings for the Agni in our larger forms. But coming back to the templates, if you take those same 12 babies and you look at them when they're, say, 50 or 60 or 70 years old. Some of them might be dead, but they're going to look really different. There'll be a much wider range of weights. There'll be a much wider range of heights. There'll be a much wider range of even like a hair color and things like that. So, well, maybe not necessarily hair and skin color, because most babies keep that fresh out from the gates of heaven. But there'll be a lot wider range of expression. So the templates are a little bit like babies. They remind me, or another way to think of them would be like stem cells. Some templates tend to be like very, very simple forms that have a vast potential contained within them. And there are templates for specific things, and these templates are a little bit like packages of potential that are available to help us we can find them in the field of our awareness. And by bringing awareness to a particular template for something, say a perfectly healthy liver, say we want a template for a perfectly healthy liver, then there's a form of consciousness which has a particular resonation that's got the greatest possible potential to grow into a perfectly healthy liver. Whereas the blueprint comes into play more like as the template is growing into the liver, then that template has to start to conform to the shape of a human liver, for example, as compared to the shape of a kitty cat's liver or whale's liver or whatever, other type of liver. So blueprints are more elaborated forms. And there are blueprints for physical manifestations. There are blueprints for like the storyline of a person's life, like how the life unfurls or rolls out. There are blueprints for basically everything. And it's interesting that you asked the question, because as I'm answering it right now, I love that we co-create these answers together. As I'm answering it right now, I'm seeing that there's also a relationship between blueprints and energy signatures of things. Because the energy signature, and I'm just kind of asking, being like, because you asked about other structures too, and energy signatures also, they're like flavors of consciousness, right, that reside at the causal level of the physiology. And those are also really significant and essential for a successful manifestation of anything. Okay, so the difference between, I think it should be pretty clear what the difference between a template and a blueprint is, right? The template's kind of like the pure potential of that thing, and then the blueprint is the more detailed elaboration of it. But still, in energy healing, these blueprints that I refer to at a causal level are still quite abstract. The energy signature, we could think of energy signatures, we can think of as the constituents of the blueprint. So that's one thing about the energy signatures. Like the energy signature will pick up some very specified part of an expression of your liver as compared to somebody else's liver or something like that. The other thing is that blueprints, energy signatures, they seem to be a little more temporal than blueprints. And once the archive of the blueprints are very specified, and they have a stability in them, they have structure, right? So they tend to be consistent in their expression, whereas energy signatures have a much more of a kind of a coming and going relationship with the manifesting process of the physiology. So we can bring up an energy signature as even as a kind of like a kind of a medicine that would come in, like a light medicine would come into the body, and it would be the energy signature of, for example, that soft signature that came from the mother of creation when we were doing this healing just a few minutes ago with the world's microbiome. That signature came up, and when it was up and present and picked up by our healing collective, it had a presence of its own. But once we've moved on to answering questions probably nobody's thinking about that energy signature anymore, right? It's kind of like, oh, it went away. Where did it go? So the thing about the blueprints is whether we have our awareness on the blueprint or not, it's still present. But the energy signatures are much more ethereal or temporal. They come and go. You can pick them up, or we can identify them. Like our ancestral archives have an energy signature. But because our families are constantly evolving, even those who are no longer with us are constantly evolving, that energy signature is constantly changing. So energy signatures are much more mobile, flexible, malleable. All right. And because of that, I would say probably subtler as well, right? Because they're closer. It's like I kind of see energy signatures as sort of dipping in and out across that gap between manifest and unmanifest. They'll like manifest up when you need them, and then they go back into the unmanifest like that. So they kind of come and go. Okay. Next one. Can you show us how we can utilize templates and blueprints to help divinity shine through us? Oh, great question. Okay. So this Agni, when it sits deep, deep in the gap between unmanifest and manifest. It emerges essentially out of nothing. It emerges out of nothing. It's very much in the same realm as the templates, which are the very deep, deep emergences. They're like the stem cells. They haven't really become something yet. Agni sits at that level, but is already integrated. That's so interesting. Okay, so Agni in its integrated state I'm asking how does Agni stabilize, or how does it interface with the templates which are responsible for all the things that manifest in creation? How does Agni comes up in it? It almost comes in like the fuel. Because Agni is born of a complementary pair of opposites. Agni holds tight to totality. It has an aspect of completion as an integral part of its nature. So the templates are just the potential of something to manifest. They are not so much complete. So what Agni brings to the template is a completion of form. It brings a sense of totality, and that totality awakens the ability of the templates to start to evolve into more manifest forms. So there must be a template for perfect divine embodiment, right? Sure, why not? So going to the archive of the templates, and I'm just asking that reverently asking the overseeing intelligence of that space where those templates reside. Where is that template that is most ideally suited to support our ability to manifest divinity perfectly? And the answer coming back is all the templates are suited to support divinity becoming manifest. That was not helpful. Okay, so that's all right. We still have some blueprints to work with, right? So I am, however, seeing that there are templates that are optimally suited to promote highest integration and health and well-being for our body elementals. So that can be done. And the body elemental, as you know, rebuilds new tissue. It heals damage to the physiology, and it's responsible for overseeing all the balancing of Agnis. That's also done by the body elemental, right? The way, the selection of the choices we make, like our cravings and our desires and what we put ourselves into. So that template has an energy signature, which is connected to the entire Davic kingdom. And it's connected to the field of Davic intelligence in creation universally. The template's so broad in its capability. So that's a very interesting template. And it's also very abstract. It looks like it's not so, in my perception, I'm not seeing it like really clearly defined. I'm not seeing it like with edges, right? It's like, it's more like it's a very spread out form. And I'm seeing it rising up as the blueprints I'm asking being, as this template is kind of getting activated or woken up, it's waking up due to the application of that impulse of manifestation that comes from the source of creation, that Agnim. How does it manifest for each one of us? And is there a blueprint for the greatest, most, we can say, optimal expression or the most perfect expression of the body elementals, and thus promoting the foundation for the body's ability to be invincible and to self-heal? So the blueprint includes integration between what we think of as the body elemental and what we think of as the physical body. So there's no separation. There's no separation, no separation, no separation. So the body essentially, it also rises up to the status of its own Davic intelligence. Ooh, that's nice. Okay, so what I'm seeing happening is integration, lots of integration between the structure responsible for maintaining the health of the physiology and the actual physicality of the body. And it's a very kind of abstract process that's taking place, but it's essentially appears to be clearing long-held beliefs and ancestral beliefs and understanding. So at the molecular level of the physiology, that's happening. But also at a very kind of direct experiential level, there's a clearing of the belief in the physical form, in the physical body, passed down from ancestors, but clearing that. I'm seeing lots of things happening. Sorry, that's why I'm waiting here. Clearing it. Any sense of non-duality, basically. Basically, that's what's clearing. It's non-duality, but it's clearing at an experiential level of very fine tissue or texture of the physical body. And as that happens, I'm seeing something that looks like little explosions of light in every small particle of the physical form at a very, very fine level. It looks like subatomic, quantum level, or subatomic level. There's this just deep, deep activation of this light. And the light looks very much like the original template. It's a very sweet kind of, we would say, like burst of Agni, of enthusiastic, pure, innocent, pure energy, pure light, like that. It's going on at a deep level of the body. And I feel as if what it's doing is it's really waking up a level of intelligence in the body that I've never seen wake up before. I had a dream last night, and I always lucid dream. So I was having a lucid dream that we were having our webinar. I was dreaming about the webinar. And then I dreamed that this friend of mine yelled. He went, oh, he yelled like that. And when he yelled like that in my dream, it's like I woke up another level. And it was so interesting because I was already lucid dreaming. But then when this happened in my dream, all of a sudden I was like really lucid dreaming like 2.0 or something like that. And I feel as if that's what's happening right now in the body, is that it's a kind of a deep, deep wake up to the physiology, the physicality of our bodies on a very material level. It's like our bodies are waking up to their reality, their essence as being just pure light form. It's beautiful. It's beautiful. It's beautiful. Ooh. Okay. Okay. There's one more question, but we're at 17 minutes, so we're done. Can I give examples? I think what I'd like to do is I'd like to save the last question, if I could, for tomorrow, because it's a great question and it's even more kind of, it's even more can be elaborated than what we've done so far. And I think this is a good place to stop, because it gives all of us a chance to go have some lucid dreaming, to go get a nice rest, and integrate this work, because it's gone into a very deep level of physiology. So thank you everyone for being with me tonight. It's been really fun to do this with all of you. It's always exciting. I rarely know which direction we're going to take, and I can tell you I wasn't expecting, but it's wonderful. And I know that our world's microbiome thanks us too, and I think that's a gift that keeps on giving. So thank you everyone for being with me. We will continue tomorrow morning for those of you who are on the webinar subscription at 11 o'clock, and we'll pick up from where we left off tonight. Oh, lots of people raising their hands. Thank you everyone. So beautiful to be with everyone. Oh, you guys have the most beautiful hearts. Oh. Okay, good night. It's hard to say goodbye. Love you so much.